Hello, everybody. Welcome to a long awaited part three to the Historical Tornadoes Season 1. I have worked a crap ton on this video, so I'm really hoping y'all enjoy this video because I am going to. Today, we're hopping on over the States. My past two videos were on, European tornadoes, and they were pretty good. They did all right. But this video is where I take it another step. I'm going to go super in-depth detail about a lot of tornadoes that have touched down during this tornado outbreak. That's what I'll do with a lot of tornado outbreaks that I'll cover on this channel. So let's go ahead and hop into it. Let's not waste any more time. The 1953 Waco Tornado Outbreak. A video by Roman Does Weather. I want to start off by saying that this was one of the worst tornado outbreaks ever in U.S. history. Over a period of 3 days, around 33 tornadoes touched down and caused extreme destruction amounting to above 800 million US dollars in today. This outbreak took the lives of 144 people and injured the lives of 895. This outbreak produced the deadliest tornado in Texas history, the Waco tornado. I will be going in depth while highlighting times during this outbreak. There's a few photos from the Waco tornado as well, so go ahead and take a look at those while I go ahead and go on. Let's go. May 9th, 1953, the first day. So the first tornado of the outbreak actually touched down in South Dakota at around 5:05 p.m. and it only lasted about 2 miles. Its maximum width was around 440 yards and it only got an F1 rating. But here is a description of that tornado. A short-lived, weak, but large tornado caused minor damage to several structures, including a hangar at the Huron Regional Airport, a barn, and outbuildings on a farmstead. I also got the location of the town in South Dakota, and I also got the exact path of the tornado from Tornado Archive. So those are gonna be the two photos that you're gonna see a lot on this video. Let's go ahead and hop into the second tornado of the outbreak near Bryant, South Dakota, that started at around 7 p.m. and lasted about 7 miles on the ground. Its maximum width was around 100 yards or so. Here's the description on it. A tornado developed near Cherry Lake and headed north-northeastward, producing minimal damage to structures on several farms. There is the path of that tornado. And that tornado was also rated an F1. Here's our third tornado of the day near McLean, Nebraska, which started at around 9 p.m. and on the path length it only lasted around 1.5 miles, and its maximum width was 10 yards. So a very, very small tornado. Here's the description. Only negligible damage occurred as a tornado briefly touched down. It was still rated an F1 though. Here we start to get pretty in depth. This is the first intense tornado of the outbreak near Republic, Kansas, and it started at around 9:10 p.m. Its path length was around 13.5 miles and its maximum width was 10 yards. This tornado may have first developed south of Cortland, Kansas, causing minor damage to a farmstead before redeveloping possibly as a separate tornado beyond town. From that point on, it badly damaged around 10 farms or so in Kansas, with lesser damage to others in its path. One of the farmhouses was called destroyed, along with many sheds and barns. According to Grzoulis, the tornado may have entered Nebraska, ending just north of the Kansas-Nebraska border, but its path in Nebraska was overlooked as media mostly covered a separate intense tornado that happened. Total losses reached around $45,000. One injury may have occurred, but was officially unconfirmed. So here's the path of that tornado. I also accounted for the damage and the injuries. So that is an unconfirmed injury as well. Here's the tornado that stole all the shine in the light switch from that other tornado we were talking about. This is the tornado that hit Belvidere, Nebraska around 9:45 p.m. And this tornado lasted 46.9 miles, which is a long time on the ground, and its maximum width was 880 yards. This large, intense, long-tracked, and very damaging tornado struck Belvidere, leveling a significant part of the town. In town, almost 100 structures were beyond repair, including 50 residences and 40 businesses. A church lost its walls and roof, with only its arch left standing, and winds removed the uppermost wing of a school. Two farmhouses outside Belvedere sustained possible F4 damage. Additionally, aircraft and hangars were wrecked. Total losses reached $2.5 million in 1953 US dollars, and 82 injuries were officially reported, though the actual total may have been 80. So I also noted that this tornado may have been an F4. Put the death in the injury counter up here and the damage. So those are the things you're going to have to look out here for as I go along these slides. So the next tornado of the day was near Sumner, Nebraska around 11 p.m. and it only lasted quite a little bit on the ground, and it only traveled around 1.5 miles. Its maximum width was 10 yards, but it was a short-lived but strong tornado that wrecked several structures, including a sizable barn. The tornado was not rated as significant F2 plus by tornado researcher Thomas P. Grzoulis, whose name is going to show up a lot during this tornado outbreak because he was one of the guys that really kind of went in depth with this tornado outbreak as well and studied all the tornadoes and such. But this tornado was rated an F2 at the end. Here's the totals for May 9th, 1953. We had 6 tornadoes, 3 F1s, 1 F2, and 2 intense F3 tornadoes. Damage was around $30 million or so, and the costliest tornado was the Belvedere F3, and we had 5 deaths today. The deadliest tornado was the Belvedere F3. We had around 80 to 83 injuries. That was the first day of the outbreak. Let's talk about the second day, May 10th, 1953. The first tornado of the day started near Vinson, Oklahoma at around 0700 UTC, and it lasted 3.6 miles on the ground. Its maximum width was 440 yards. Here's the description. A weak tornado tracked through areas east of Vinson, damaging small structures, including barns, sheds, and some garages. The next tornado appeared near Wichita, Kansas at around 0800 UTC, and its path length was significantly longer at around 42.5 miles. Its maximum width was 10 yards, and here's the only description labeled with this incident. Long-tracked tornado hit southwestern Wichita with no casualties reported. Well, that's not a lot, but remember, this was back in 1953, so they really didn't have a lot. Now we're getting ready to talk about the Caldwell, Kansas F2, which started at around 0900 UTC, and it lasted for 38.8 miles on the ground, and its maximum width was 10 yards. An intermittent tornado produced a skipping swath of damage from south of Caldwell, Kansas to Udall. It struck 13 farmsteads, but produced only low-end F2 damage to some of them. The event may have been a family of 2 or more tornadoes, as eyewitnesses reported multiple funnels on the ground. Additionally, a related but unconfirmed tornado may have caused damage to a farm in Butler County, Kansas. Total losses reached $30,000 1953 USD, and one person may have been injured but was not officially counted. So this tornado was rated. My microphone real quick. This tornado was rated an F2, um, and there's the damage. So it was around $350,000 in 2024 US dollars. Here's our first intense tornado of the day, May 10th, 1953, around Eskridge, Kansas, at around 1,000 UTC or 1,000 UTC. It lasted for 52.2 miles on the ground, and its maximum width was 10 yards. This intense F3 tornado first caused minor damage to roofing material near Cottonwood Falls. Later, the tornado further damaged farm equipment, trees, and numerous structures. After briefly lifting or dissipating, the tornado or tornado family damaged or destroyed 14 cabins near Lake Cahola. In the Bushong area, the tornado affected 3 farms before weakening again. The last damage, apparently minimal, occurred near Harveyville. The tornado was not rated as significant F2 plus by Grzoulis. Now we're going to talk about the Russellville, Arkansas F2 that started at around 1810 UTC and lasted for only 2 miles on the ground, and its maximum width was 200 yards. Eyewitnesses observed twin tornadoes moving parallel to each other that combined into one narrow funnel and struck Russellville. Several structures sustained modest damage, and a movable roller rink was wrecked. The tornado was not rated as significant F2 plus by Grazoulis, but you can definitely see the path of that tornado there. Went right through the town. Now we're going to talk about our first violent tornado of the day, if you say so, the Millerton, Iowa F4. It started at around 2,115 UTC and lasted for around 6 miles on the ground. Its maximum width was 10 yards. A violent tornado, the first of the outbreak sequence, produced a low-end F4 damage to a farmhouse, dispersing the debris a short distance from the foundation. Here's our second violent tornado of the day, near Garner, Iowa. It started at around 2,210 UTC and lasted for almost 30 miles on the ground. Its maximum width was 10 yards, and here's the description on this large violent tornado. A long-lived violent tornado tracked through several farms, damaging or destroying about 30 homes. Roughly 200 other structures on farms were likewise impacted. One farm lost all its buildings, with only the main house left standing. Of the 3 injuries, 2 were critical, both to a couple near Ventura. So there was only 3 injuries with this tornado. Now we're going to talk about the Hollandale, Minnesota tornado, which was the first pretty intense tornado of this outbreak that killed quite a bit of people. This started at around 2,300 UTC and lasted for about 7 miles on the ground. Its maximum width was around 67 yards. This tornado was of moderate intensity, narrow, and relatively short-tracked, yet was one of the most devastating of the tornado outbreak sequence. Shortly after formation, it struck a big shack, which was hurled from its foundation. 6 occupants, 2 parents, their 4 children, and 2 relatives died in the destruction of the shack, which housed migrant workers. Afterward, the tornado leveled another small residence and mildly damaged 10 nearby structures. In all, the tornado leveled 3 homes, 4 barns, and numerous outbuildings on 6 farms, mainly near Hollandale and Maple Island. Total losses reached $35,000, 1953 USD, and 3 people were injured. So 6 people sadly died during this tornado, and they were all in the same building. And this tornado caused around $400,000 in damage in today's money. Today, we're going to talk about the longest track tornado of the outbreak, the Chester, Iowa F4 that started at around 2,330 UTC and lasted 162 miles on the ground, which is mental. Um, just to say, this was a tornado family, but it produced a bunch of F4 tornadoes, most likely. The maximum width was 100 yards, and this tornado caused 2 deaths and 24 injuries. Here's the description on this tornado. I suggest you strap in your seatbelts, grab some popcorn, because I'm going to be reading quite a bit. This destructive, violent, and extremely long track tornado family likely contained at least 5 distinct tornadoes spawned by one supercell. The first tornado in the series, though officially unconfirmed, may have formed near Greene in Butler County, Iowa, causing significant destruction on a farmstead. Continuous damage resumed near Chester, severely affecting 11 farms south of the Minnesota-Iowa border, with 2 injuries in Iowa. The storm then crossed into southern Minnesota, killing 1 person in a destroyed barn near Wyckoff. Near Chatfield, the tornado carried a schoolhouse from its foundation, causing its disintegration. The tornado then hit a few cars halfway between Dover and St. Charles, one of which was carried 100 feet, or about 30 meters, injuring 4 occupants and killing the fifth, a child. In Minnesota, 4 other people sustained injuries while inside a barn, and 3 more injuries were in another automobile. In all, 17 injuries were confirmed in the state. Across Fillmore, Olmsted, and Winona counties in Minnesota, over 24 farms received widespread, often severe damage, including the destruction of most buildings in some cases. Where was I? Oh, the tornado downed many power lines and utility poles as well. and there was widespread loss of livestock. Entering Whitewater State Park, the tornado splintered hundreds of trees, and buildings in the park were badly damaged. After destroying a steel bridge near Crystal Spring, the tornado apparently dissipated into straight line winds, though Grzoulis suggested that tornado damage may have continued to Cochrane, Wisconsin. Reports indicated that the storm crossed the Mississippi River into Wisconsin, where tornado activity definitely resumed northeast of Cochrane and ended near Brownville. As in Minnesota, damage was discontinuous, implying that two or more tornadoes were involved between Cochrane and Brownsville. Between Cochrane and Brownsville, the tornado hit roughly 100 farms, at least 20 of which lost buildings and produced high end F3 damage to some homes. Hundreds of dead livestock littered the landscape. Beyond Brownsville, the tornadoes likely weakened and reformed into two, perhaps three others, starting with spotty damage near Gilman. A farmhouse was swept from its foundation, and fragments of the home were lofted for 7 miles, or about 11 kilometers. The tornado was reportedly exceptionally violent while southeast of Catawba, shortly before dissipation. 5 injuries occurred in Wisconsin, though the actual total may have been 12. Maximum damage intensity. Maximum damage intensity was F3 in Iowa and Minnesota and F4 in Wisconsin. The swath of damage between St. Charles and Whitewater State Park, Minnesota, across Olmsted and Winona counties may have been from a separate thunderstorm, as Grzoulis does not count it as part of the same tornado family. That was a lot, but there's going to be way longer ones. So, still, grab your popcorn. Hopefully, it's still with you. Hopefully, you have a drink as well. It's going to be a long video. Now we're going to be talking about the Farmersburg, Iowa F3 that started at 000 UTC and lasted 6.6 miles on the ground and had a maximum width at about 400 yards. An intense tornado severely affected 8 farms in its path, demolishing barns and silo. Livestock suffered significant losses, with 60 or more head of cattle dead. A farmer reportedly sustained non critical injuries after being tossed for 700 feet, but was not documented in the official injury total. While officially rated F3, the tornado was assigned an F2 rating by Thomas P. Grzoulis. The Amory, Wisconsin tornado. This is another killer tornado and and one of the most destructive and violent tornadoes of the outbreak. This started at 30 UTC and lasted for around 105 miles on the ground. Another extremely long track tornado. The maximum width with this tornado was around 100 yards. This tornado killed 4 people and injured 27. Although rated an F2, Thomas B. Grzoulis said he found F4 damage. Strap in your seatbelts because we're going to go straight in to the description. This was the second of 2 long track tornado families in Wisconsin on May 10th. It first formed on the outskirts of River Falls and tracked to the north-northeast. Here, the tornado demolished a summer house, which collapsed onto occupants, injuring 4 who had been picnicking but had sought safety during the storm. Initially, multiple tornadoes were likely present, as damage was discontinuous until the tornadoes passed east of New Richmond. At that point, a continuous swath of significant damage began and continued to near Amory. The first fatality, an elderly female, occurred in St. Croix County when her home was leveled, injuring 3 other people inside. Farther on in Polk County, 2 additional deaths took place, one from flying debris, another in a destroyed barn. In Burnett County, the tornado felled a tree which hit a dairy building, causing a final death. Beyond Amory, scattered, poorly documented destruction occurred for the remainder of the path. A separate tornado likely formed near Minong and dissipated near Gordon. Hello? Hello? Okay, we're still good. My microphone randomly cuts out. I'm so sorry. Minong dissipated near Gordon, destroying cabins and other small residences. 6 injuries occurred across Washburn and Douglas counties, one of which was severe. There were 11 injuries near Amory and 27 along the entire path. Reports from local staff on the American Red Cross indicated that the tornado family destroyed or damaged 113 homes and affected 215 other structures, collapsing barns, killing livestock inside. Though the precise number was undetermined, numerous trees were downed along the path and utilities were disrupted. The tornadoes mostly impacted sparsely populated areas. While officially rated F2, the tornado was assigned an F4 rating by Grzoulis based on damage to homes near Amory. That was the second day of action. Let's look at the total pileup. 22 tornadoes, 10 of which being F1s, 1 F0, 6 F2s, 2 F3s, and 3 F4s. There were around 12 deaths on this day, and the deadliest tornado was the Hollandale F2. There was around 59 injuries on this day as well, and the damage amounted to 763,000 in 2024 US dollars, with the costliest tornado being the Hollandale F2. The final day, the day Waco fell, May 11th, 1953. It's going to get bumpy. The first tornado of the day was a very violent tornado that struck a very populated area. The city was San Angelo, Texas. This tornado started at 2015 UTC and lasted for 10 miles on the ground. Its maximum width was 880 yards. This F4 was the first of two extremely intense tornadoes to strike Texas on May 11th, the other being the Waco tornado, and was likely spawned by an outflow boundary. After forming west-northwest of San Angelo, the tornado headed east-southeast and struck the north side of the city. There, the tornado caused catastrophic damage to a third of the city. In all, 288 homes were destroyed, and about 200 sustained at least some damage. Many of the homes were swept away in a 15 square block section of the city, and peak damage approached F5 intensity. Additionally, 19 businesses were hit, including the Rocket Drive-In Theater, and 172 vehicles were wrecked. The storm struck a school around 15 minutes before students were scheduled for dismissal. The building, which had 2 stories, lost its roof and many walls, but students sheltered safely in interior hallways and only 12 were injured, none critically. Though the school sustained $100,000 losses in 1953, total contemporary damages reached $3.4 million and 159 injuries occurred during this tornado. This tornado killed 13 people, sadly, and caused around $40 million in damage in 2024 US dollars. There is a picture down in the lower right of that damage, and there are some more photos I'm about to show you on this next slide. So here's the front page of the newspaper. Here's some damage to the school, and here's a quote. "We would let the kids off the bus and there was no home there, just a stack of wood." I felt this quote was really deep and really meaningful. So I decided to, throw that in there too, because it would kind of throw in, yeah, when you look at that quote, you say like, wow, that's pretty tough. That's pretty deep. So I threw that in there. Just crazy damage. An absolutely violent tornado. Now here is the finale. The Waco tornado. Hold on real quick. Let me just check if my microphone's still working good. We're working good. Okay, we're working good. Sweet. The finale. The F5 Waco tornado that started at 2210 UTC and lasted for around 21 miles on the ground and had a maximum peak width of 583 yards. The highest winds in this tornado were recorded to be over 261 miles per hour, which makes it a definite F5. There were 114 deaths that occurred with this tornado, and it is tied with the 1902 Goliad tornado for the deadliest tornado in Texas's history. This tornado caused around 600 injured people, and the damage was around $40 million in 1953 US dollars and around $600 million in 2024 USD. The towns affected by this tornado were Lorena, Texas, Waco, Texas, of course, Belmead, Texas, and Axtell, Texas. Here are a couple of the paths, one being on the Wikipedia page and one being on Tornado Archive, both showing this tornado taking it through a direct path through Waco. Here's the tornado description of this tornado. According to an old legend attributed without corroboration to the Hueco, a local and Native American tribe, tornadoes, or at least severe ones, could not touch down in Waco, a city located in a geological depression. Supposedly, due to the bluffs around the Brazos River, tornadoes and other severe weather were relatively rare and mild in the city. The 1953 storm, however, disproved the myth entirely when it tracked directly through downtown Waco as an F5 tornado. The tornado first formed around 4:10 p.m., about 3 miles northwest of the Lorena community. It quickly began damaging structures, destroying a home near Lorena as it tracked northeastward. As it neared Waco, operators of a weather radar at Texas A&M University detected a hook echo in association with the parent supercell. This was one of the first times that radar linked tornado genesis with hook echo signatures. However, because heavy rain obscured the tornado, it was largely invisible to people in its path. The high precipitation nature of the parent storm may have heightened the death toll in Waco by delaying appropriate action. The storm also generated baseball-sized hail in its path. The tornado passed close to Hewitt before entering downtown Waco. As the thunderstorm began pounding the city with rain, many people on the streets crowded into local buildings for shelter. Yet few of the buildings in downtown Waco were constructed sturdily enough to withstand the winds, so they collapsed almost immediately. 30 people died in the R.T. Dennis building alone. Newer buildings with steel reinforcement, including the 22-story Amicable Office building, now called the Alico building, weathered the storm. The Dr. Pepper, the Dr. Pepper bottling plant, today the Dr. Pepper Museum, also remained standing but sustained some damage. Bricks from the collapsed structures piled up in the street for a depth of 5 feet. Some survivors were trapped under rubble for 14 or more hours. Numerous bodies remained buried beneath piles of rubble, and for many days were unaccounted for. After devastating downtown Waco, the tornado continued to the northeast and dissipated about 5 miles west of Axtell, Texas. While the tornado destroyed homes outside of the city, media largely focused on destruction in downtown Waco. In all, 114 deaths occurred in the Waco area, with 597 injured and over $40 million, 1953 USD, in property damage. The tornado destroyed around 200 businesses and factories. 150 homes were wrecked, and over 2,000 cars sustained at least some damage. The aftermath of the Waco tornado. Following the Waco tornado, attempts to organize disaster relief were stymied by poor organization. Local residents had not expected the tornado and had assumed that the area's geography safeguarded Waco from tornadoes. Initially, the tornado also severed communications between downtown Waco and outlying areas, so assistance was slow to arrive. The chaotic relief efforts eventually spurred greater coordination between civilians and local governments, leading to the development of civil defense. Notably, the Waco event was one of the first instances that proved the effectiveness of radar in tracking tornado genesis. Coincidentally, another such case occurred later in the same year. A retrospective study of the tornado that struck Worcester, Massachusetts on June 9th revealed that, as at Waco, local radar detected the hook echo that signified the tornado. Researchers concluded that improved communications, coupled with the formation of radar coverage, could lead to accurate tornado warnings, thereby reducing loss of life in future storms. This task proved especially important following the devastating loss of life at Waco and Worcester, along with the June 8th catastrophe at Flint, Michigan in the same year. The state of Texas supported the implementation of 20 radar facilities, each with a 200-mile wide radius, that proved successful in reducing death tolls in later tornadoes. The system was known as the Texas Radar Tornado Warning Network and also included communications between weather officials, storm spotters, and local officials. Thus, the Waco tornado helped catalyze development of a nationwide severe weather warning system. The Waco tornado remains the 11th deadliest tornado on record in United States history and is tied with the 1902. Hello? Okay, sweet. My bad. It's tied with a 1902 Goliad, Texas tornado as the deadliest in Texas history. This storm also intersected with the long legacy of racism against black residents of Waco. After the disaster, some people in the local African American community saw the tornado as divine retribution for the lynching of Jesse Washington over 30 years prior. Here's some photos of the damage from this tornado, including the damage to Main Street, showing bricks all over Main Street. Absolutely insane, heartbreaking destruction from Waco, Texas. One of the worst tornadoes to ever happen in Texas's history. Here was some surface analysis on the morning and afternoon of May 11th, 1953 from Fort Worth, Dallas, NWS. At 9:30 a.m., you could see the stable warm front and the high pressure system. By at 4:30 p.m., you could definitely see that everything went downhill from there. The great Alico building overlooking a sea of rubble in a broken city. The 1953 Waco Tornado Outbreak. Here was the final total for the last day of the outbreak. May 11th, 1953 caused 5 tornadoes, 2 F1s, 1 F2, 1 F4, and 1 F5. We had 127 deaths occur on this date, with the deadliest tornado, of course, being the Waco F5. There were around 756 injuries on this day as well, and damage accounted for $500 million in 2024 USD. Here's some overall outbreak statistics. There were 33 tornadoes. Most active day was the 10th. There were 9 F3 plus tornadoes, and the outbreak caused 144 deaths and 895 injuries. Damage exceeded around $800 million in 2024 dollars, and the longest track tornado was the Chester, Iowa F4. Closing thoughts. This was the first tornado/tornado outbreak that I could actually really go in depth for. I really worked hard on this video, trying to get everything together, trying to find resources, and trying to put together the slides and recording. This took about 6 hours or 7 hours to complete, just the slides. I devote my life to this passion for letting people know about historical events and coverage for severe weather. Anyways, the 1953 Waco tornado outbreak was a very violent and memorable tornado outbreak. The amount of killer violent tornadoes is just insane. The Waco tornado was the first tornado I have ever heard that hit a downtown area in a city. I really hope you enjoyed this video.